Mr. Jogen Gazmere, welcome to the breakfast show.
Thank you very much. It's my
Uh,
pleasure.
can I start with a question like what prompted the Bhutanese movement in late 80s?
Basically, it started as a human rights violation issue where the fundamental human rights were encroached upon by the government. Government started certain policies that led to the deprivation of right to enjoyment of culture and right to citizenship and nationality. So those were the two basic things when they were encroached upon that people had to raise voice and a movement for human rights was started.
So what was the movement all about then?
Now, as I said before that uh, before a movement was there in Bhutan, like country was quite peaceful and in a sense that there was no political freedom, but there wasn't any kind of discontent among the people because whatever economic policies, social policies were being implemented by the government that did not discriminate people from different regions. But once this one people, one nation policy was put into place by the government, that led to the blatant violation of cultural rights of especially Southern Bhutanese, and also the imposition of this new citizenship law of 1985, as well as its implementation through the 1988 Citizenship Act, led to mass disenfranchisement of Southern Bhutanese. So these two factors really led to a situation where people found that they were very insecure within the country. So in order to ask for some kind of justice, they tried to appeal the king, and even the representatives who were representing southern Bhutan, especially Mr. Teknath Rizal and Vidyapati Bhandari, they tried to appeal the king, and that appeal was not listened to. So when all this justice began to be denied to the people, finally people had to launch a human rights movement.
There was a moment, but was there enough preparation for the moment?
No, especially when we say preparation, whenever certain policies developed, people don't have the time to get into long preparation. There was a kind of reaction because people suddenly found that their rights were being denied, and it was a kind of fighting kind of situation where once your house is in fire, you don't seem to prepare, you react to that. So it was initially it was that kind of situation where people reacted because there was no other way, because they found that they were being cornered, they were being denied of their rights, so they reacted. But later on, gradually people started to come together and try to organize certain activities, certain campaign, and I should say that it was a kind of impromptu or abrupt kind of activities that initially started. Yeah.
And can you tell us what were the aftermaths of the spontaneously uh, prompted movement?
Now, what happened was like initially we tried to organize human rights groups, and there was an organization launched called People's Forum for Human Rights, and Mr. Rizal was the chairperson, and I was elected as a founding general secretary of that organization. And initially what we wanted to do was to mobilize as many educated people as possible to create awareness about what was happening, how the policies were being made by the government and how that was implemented. And we also had a plan to do some kind of international campaigning so as to create awareness among different governments about what was happening in the country. So it was a very systematic kind of activities that was going on. But once the King of Bhutan requested the King of Nepal to arrest and extradite Mr. Rizal, myself, and other friend Sushil, who I mean, we were in exile at that time. We were hiding because many of our friends were already arrested in the country, so they were being tortured, and we feared that, and we came out in exile, and we were actually in hiding, but at the same time we were trying to prepare documents and all those things to be disseminated to the international community. But in the meanwhile, what we found was suddenly King of Bhutan requested King of Nepal, and three of us, Mr. Rizal, myself, and Sushil, we were arrested from Nepal, and we were extradited, especially in a chartered plane, to Bhutan. And once the human rights movement was totally banned or suppressed, after that the other groups started a movement for democracy, and later on, once the call for democracy was made by the people, at that time government imposed martial law, and that really led to a very tragic situation where there was mass arrest, torture, rape, intimidation, looting, arson, and everything happened in southern Bhutan, and that was really a very, very tragic time.
Yeah, as you mentioned, you along with Cheknath Rizal and Sushil Pokhrel were arrested in Birthamur, Nepal, and extradited to the then government of Bhutan by the Marichman Singh government of Nepal. You were arrested and extradited, and you were put in jail. Yeah. So can you tell us how was the life in jail?
Yeah, it was pretty difficult. Like initially, when we were taken from Nepal, then we were kept in a guest house, King Gachuling guest house, for many months, and at that time we were moved from one place to another place during night, and it was winter time, and we could really feel that was something very bad was going to happen, because Bhutan has a very bad history of terminating these political dissident or human rights workers. So we were very fearful that they can kill us anytime, but if that did not happen, ultimately what happened was we were sent to Wangdi Phudang Rabuna Central Prison, where the political prisoners are usually kept, and there in the prison we were kept in solitary confinement, and I spent around 27 months in solitary confinement. What happened was, once we were taken, like from Thimphu, we were moved to Wangdi Phudang at night. So when it was very dark, around midnight, we reached the prison, and as soon as we were put into the prison, they brought the shackles almost 2 feet long, almost 3 inches diameter shackle was put on the leg, and we were handcuffed, and we were just kept individually in single room as a solitary confinement, and that was a very horrifying situation, and that continued for very long, and especially you can imagine, like to be spending alone in a room continuously without any interaction. That's so difficult. So
when were you released then?
I was released in 1991, around December, and around February 1992.
Okay.
So in between there was a visit from Amnesty International, and when Amnesty International came, of course, they tried to ensure that we were being treated well. Otherwise, while we were in prison, the treatment was so bad, like the food and everything, including some kind of psychological and mental harassment, and all those things continued there.
Yeah, after you were arrested, many civilians were also arrested, tortured, and killed during that time, because of which many people had to flee with the fear of persecution. Actually, what was the then government wanted to do with that?
I think government felt that it did not expect that something this kind of movement would start in the country. Because the very reason why King started all this policy was to ensure that his power was safe and secure, like there was no opposition or no call for democracy in Bhutan. But when the fundamental human rights were encroached, then there was a necessity for going for some kind of a call for democracy and human rights. So once that happened, government felt that no, they should do something very strong, and when the martial law was imposed, then it wanted to eliminate any possibility of opposition in the country. So what government opted was to let free the army in south, and then they started to evict the people at gunpoint. And especially there was a very shrewd kind of strategy that was adopted by the government, where they try to make the people fill a form called voluntary migration form, actually to indicate to show to the international community that people were leaving the country voluntarily. But all those things were happening at the gunpoint, and people were made to accept a very disproportionate amount of money as to the valuation of their landed or other property that they had. And at the gunpoint, people they signed, and out of fear they just left the country to whatever place they could find it safe.
Yeah, Dr. Manfred Ringhofer, who has been a very close friend and a great supporter about this movement, has said in his research, Bhutanese refugee issue is not ethnic cleansing issue, but it is an issue of human rights and democracy. But we have been saying this is, we have been saying we're the victims of ethnic cleansing. How do you express the views on that?
I think our issue has a different context to this. There is a human rights component, there is a democracy as a component, but we also have a cultural and ethnic context to our issue. I would more prefer to call this one as a ethno-cultural cleansing, because even today in Bhutan, the culture of southern Bhutanese is not constitutionally recognized. If you take example of even if you go back to the European history in in 40s or early 30s, around that time you find that many of the ethnic communities were being deprived of their identities. Like especially if you take example of Mussolini's Italy, we find that the German people, their identity were suppressed. They were not allowed to have their own cultural and identity being expressed in the place where they were living. And similarly, if you look at even in present Iran, if you look at the situation of Baha'i people who follow Baha'i faith, they are also suffering from cultural genocide. Like they are not allowed to express their cultural values even now. So even in Bhutan, if you see at present, you find that those kind of cultural expression is not allowed among the southern Bhutanese. But after the democratic movement, what we found was it was specifically the southern Bhutanese who were singled out and they were thrown out of the country. So this is a particular ethnic community. So there is an element of ethnic cleansing, there is an element of cultural cleansing, there are also components of human rights and democracy all mixed together in the Bhutanese issue.
Right. What do you think the causes behind for failing to get international support for Bhutan's democratic movement by then?
I don't accept that we didn't get any international attention, because we were some of the people who have been going to United Nations and trying to campaign about this issue. And later on, when we started this appeal movement where the refugees from the camp, they had a peace march to Bhutan. At that time, we had received communication from head of the countries from more than 20 different countries. So we were able to highlight our issue and take to that international level. Only that, like, we could not sustain the movement, and there was no unity among the groups there, because of which I think we were not able to garner or give momentum to what we had achieved in terms of gaining some kind of international attention. Like if you look at the European Union resolution that was adopted on March 14, 1993. So at that time also, 1995. Yeah. At the time also what we found is like even a very important platform like European Union had adopted a resolution where it tried to, asked government of Bhutan in a very strong term that it should try to resolve the refugee crisis and try to protect the human rights of southern Bhutanese. So because of our activities, that even European Union was forced to take up some kind of resolution. So we cannot say that there was no international attention, but only that we could not exploit to whatever attention we had achieved at that time.
And finally, Bhutan has been transitioned into parliamentary democracy. What role do you think activism in exile played to bring political changes in Bhutan?
Very, very crucial. Had there been no activities in exile, King would have just continued, because when the call for democracy and human rights was made in the beginning, King said that Bhutan is the most politically very good country, like it had all the rights and other things that people were enjoying. So King said that there is no need for any change. So even in the early 90s, when the struggle was going on, King was not willing to make any political change or any political concession. But later on, what we did was we continued with the struggle despite a lot of sufferings in the refugee camp. The people were suffering, but we continued to advocate for the cause. And there was continuously, like as I said, that the European Union was always trying to pressurize Bhutan. There was also pressure from the United States, where from the annual report from the States Department clearly States about whatever human rights violation was taking place in the country. Amnesty International reports clearly stated all these things. So it was the activities that was going in Exile that really pressurized the different government not to just remain silent to what was happening in the country. So these activities, a persistent activity that really make all the countries, important countries in the world, to pressurize Bhutan, and Bhutan had to finally give it up, and King had to call democracy.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks.